Hello and welcome to Wisconsin in Focus, powered by the Center Square. I'm JD Davidson, regional editor at the Center Square News Service. Dan McCaleb has the day off. Joining me today is the Center Square's Wisconsin correspondent, Benjamin Yount. Hey, Ben, how are you?
Well, we're getting awfully close to Thanksgiving, and I have not yet bought my 3 turkeys. We fry 2, and then we do another one on the grill. Problem is, son number 2 is back from the Air Force this year, and he's the big drumstick guy. So now I got to actually make all of the drumsticks, and I haven't figured that out. I may have to get a new grill for that one. I may have to go and get a new grill.
I would suggest, and I spent a lot of time living in the South, the turducken. It is amazing, and you got to order it from Louisiana. It's not really a turducken if you don't get it from Louisiana, but it is incredibly good, and it kind of wraps up all 3 in one, so that knocks 1 or 2 more steps that you have to take.
I like it. Maybe add it to the menu. We'll see what we can get done.
Yeah, absolutely. You better have a big crowd if you're going to have one of those, though. We're recording this on Thursday, November 16th. And Ben, earlier this week, 2 groups recently challenged the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction's evaluation of the districts around the state. They wondered how poor reading and math scores can equate to meeting expectations. Tell me a little bit about the concerns of those groups.
We here in Wisconsin, and I think this is similar in most states, we do not do well on standardized tests. That we got to look last month at the scores from last spring. And 60%, thereabout, little above, little below, 60% of kids in the state of Wisconsin cannot read or write at grade level. They fall below those benchmarks. And the numbers that were released this week are the school and school district level reports on those exact same numbers. And so we got a better look this week, another snapshot, as I like to call it, of just which schools in Wisconsin are falling below and which schools in Wisconsin are exceeding state standards. And when the numbers came out, again, the actual scores on the tests didn't change. This is the same look at the exact same tests where we saw 60% of kids failing to meet grade level, yet over 90%, 94 point something percent of schools met expectations. And you have exceed expectations, meet expectations, fall below expectations. And so even though 60% of kids in the state cannot read or write at grade level, 90% of schools in the state are graded as passing. And the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, who does a lot of education research, and the Institute for Reforming Government, who does even more education research, raised the questions quickly of, well, just what expectations are there for Wisconsin public schools? And they pointed out some very specific schools and school districts that were far below what I think most parents would expect their kids to be doing on state standardized tests.
Which districts were those?
Well, you're always going to have a problem with Milwaukee Public Schools. Milwaukee Public Schools are the largest school district in the state. They are the poorest school district in the state, and they have actually the largest racial achievement gap, not only in Wisconsin, but in the entire nation. In other words, poor black kids in Wisconsin are worse off than poor black kids in every other Baltimore schools, Memphis schools. Mississippi has turned their schools around, yet Wisconsin has not moved its racial achievement gap. You have Madison schools, second largest city in the state, second largest school district. Green Bay, Kenosha, Racine, those are the big urban areas, but you also have a number of smaller rural school districts. Quentin Claiborne, who we talked to from the Institute for Reforming Government, said, look, you've got low-income rural schools that are doing just as badly and need just as much attention. But Claiborne pointed to a 12% math grade for kids in Milwaukee Public Schools and said, how on earth is 12% meeting some sort of expectation?
You know, I find this really interesting. I've had the opportunity to live and work in 6 or 7 different states across the country. And there always seems to be this gap or divide between the, for lack of a better term, grade that a school district gets and maybe an understanding or an easy explanation of how those grades are determined when it seems like common sense will tell you that if I take a math test and get a 20, I'm not going to get a B. So what are these groups saying needs to be done?
Well, there are two things. One, school choice. That this is, again, another piece of evidence that shows when you let families choose which school is better for them, that those kids do better. Claiborne pointed out, and we use the quote in the piece, that 17 of the top 20 schools in Milwaukee are choice schools. And that gets to sort of a question that education experts will tell you, look, you can't just do apples to apples. Kids who live in affluent suburbs are not the same kids as who live in the inner city. If you're going to school every morning hungry, if the only internet in mom's house is on her cell phone, well, then it's not really easy to jump online and write that research paper on Madame Bovary. There are some apples to apples comparisons that need to be made. But when you take a look at choice schools in Milwaukee, you're taking a look at the same kids, same low income kids, same kids who grew up in the same neighborhoods. And when choice schools are outperforming public schools, that's just one more piece that says, hey, school choice seems to work. And don't forget, our Department of Public Instruction is supporting a lawsuit that would end school choice here in Wisconsin. The second thing that the groups are asking is just literally for accountability. What do parents expect when they send their kids off to school? Are parents okay with the state expectation that a little more than 10% of kids in Milwaukee can read or do math at grade level? Because I think most parents expect that when we send our children off to school for 12 years, that our kids are going to graduate high school being able to read and write and do math, have a little knowledge of science, some physics. Maybe you've read some books, have some critical thinking skills, be ready to be contributing members to society. But these numbers, again, show that an awful lot of kids aren't even close to that.
Ben, that's all the time we have. Listeners can keep up with this story and all Wisconsin stories at thecentersquare.com. For Ben Yount, I'm J.D. Davidson. Please subscribe, and thank you for listening.